I think the biggest difference is like how much more hands-on Rossi is, and how much he's like micromanaging other players in general. And I feel like for our team, to a certain extent, that's pretty good because we have a lot of players that don't like to talk as much.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And this is a problem whenever you don't have an IGO who's not hands-on, which is King. King thrives in a more loose environment when you have players who can fill out the gap. For example, for us last year, that was Mazino.
Hey everyone, Seja2 here. I'm here with LEV's coach Itopata after today's series against MIBR. So honestly, I just kind of want to quickly get your thoughts on today's series. Both teams had, a new player, and MIBR is a really strong team. There are some really strong moments for LEV, but what are your kind of just early takeaways from that series?
I feel like we kind of failed to follow our game plan, and I think this was the main reason why we couldn't close out the game, because both first half of each map was obviously pretty good for us, and then something happened in the second half. We just couldn't keep up.
When you say game plan, can you just dive into that a bit more? I mean, if you can.
Of course. So, for example, on split, on attack, our composition is really good at getting mid, and then just creating fake pressure either towards A or towards B, and just doing like an end-call would be a split usually, right? And I think that from all the rounds that we played on attack, I think we ended up in a position where we call for a split like maybe once or twice. And whenever we did it, we didn't do the micro steps correctly. For example, we went for an A split, but we didn't clear out ramp. We completely forgot about ramp. We were in a good position, and then I think it was Jenon that just killed 3 people in the back. So, I feel like because we failed to we failed to follow our game plan at the start. Towards the end, whenever we were losing and there was a lot of pressure on us, and we finally did our game plan, the micro towards the game plan was pretty bad.
Okay, thank you. That really does help. So it was kind of like there was 2 different things where it was related to micro, and then like the team coordination. Yeah. When you're doing one of them, you weren't doing the others. That kind of what you would say.
Kind of like this, exactly.
Do you feel like part of that could be with kind of the new changes into the IGO where you have Rossi there instead of King?
Yeah, I think so. Because obviously we had I think like 5-6 weeks to scrim with Rossi, and every player is different from scrims and officials. So for me, it was I was really curious to see how Rossi is going to be in official games. So this was the one thing that I was looking out for today. And yeah, he is a different person now. After this loss, I feel like I know him a lot better. I know what to expect from him more, so we can start working in the right direction.
So I know that you worked with Rossi back in TSM when you were the assistant coach, right, in 2022?
I was like a strategic coach. I think I was like 3rd, 4th coach, something like this. I don't remember anymore, but we had a lot of coaches.
Mm-hmm. So I guess for people that aren't familiar with your relationship with Rossi before, can you just kind of explain how long you were working with Rossi and kind of what he was like on TSM when you were working with him, and like what the main things that you would work on back in 22 with him?
All right. Well, so in 2022, in the last split, I joined TSM, and I think this is when Rossi joined as well, or maybe he was there before that. I'm not really sure. With him being there, he was a very different person. I think he had a lot more to work in the mental department. And honestly, I saw a lot of a very big improvement from him on that part. And I think overall as a player, he improved a lot. And basically what I was doing with the players back then, I was doing a lot of the anti-stratting for them. And during scrims, I would usually like work with one player individually. Like I would create notes, and then I would go over the VOD with them, and just do like a lot of one-on-one VOD reviews with the players. And I think Rossi was probably the player that I did it the most. Now that I think about it, yeah. So I feel like we had a good connection with him ever since, and whenever things weren't working out for us, and I knew that he's without a team, I just reached out, and like we had a good chat. So overall, I feel like we have a very good connection, the two of us.
I'm actually just curious because I've never been a coach, right? So when you're a head coach versus a strategic coach, does the amount of one-on-ones that you usually have with players in a day change when you're the head coach? Like, are you kind of more focused on doing kind of more of the notes and like the organization of the play, and then kind of speaking to everyone as a group of 5 as opposed to one-on-ones? Like, what are the changes?
Yeah, usually you would focus, when you're a head coach, you would focus a lot more on bigger picture stuff, like the planning, and just in general the team's face, the team identity, the team play style, everything like that, game plans, everything like that. So right now I'm responsible for those things, and we have Desmo as the assistant coach, who's responsible more for like the individual part of the team.
So I actually do want to go back to Rossi eventually, but I kind of am just genuinely curious because I've heard a lot with tier 2 where there's kind of only usually one coach. So then, and then I believe you kind of did tier 2 coaching too as well, right? Like kind of like tier 2, tier 3. So then what's that like? How do you balance kind of the responsibilities of both a head coach and an assistant coach, and then kind of make similar improvements like that?
Well, in tier 2, obviously the level is a lot lower.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons is because teams cannot really afford to have the same staff structure, right?
Yeah.
So yes, you cannot prepare as much, and you're going to have a lot more responsibilities. And obviously, for example, you cannot do a lot of this many one-on-ones, So you would, when you're a solo coach, you would usually focus on like, okay, this player doesn't perform well on like a certain agent or a certain role. He needs to learn something new about it, or he needs some improvements in terms of like timing. I mean, it could be anything, right? It could be anything related to his game. So this is when you kind of focus on this one player, and unfortunately the other needs to stay like a little bit further back and just wait for their turn, because after all, we're humans, like we cannot work for like 18 hours every day and just not burn out.
I like the way that you kind of really speak about the importance of like the one-on-one with stuff, and then kind of understanding, like being empathetic to players. I spoke to Rossi during media day, and then he talked about how I think like the process was you spoke to him in like an interview just to see how he's been and everything like that. Can you kind of just talk about the process of initially just bringing him onto the team, and what, like kind of just like the whole process of bringing him on, and then playing the one game, and then ultimately saying, what, let's bring you as like the IGL for LEV.
Yeah, well, the first thing is, whenever he was on C9 and I knew that he was IGLing, C9 were a very scary team. So I was very impressed whenever we scrimmed against them. They were pretty good. Yeah. And in terms of calling and in terms of like macro gameplay, it felt like they're in front of us. So for me, obviously that means both Imi and Rossi were doing a really good job, right? So whenever Rossi became available, that's the reason why I thought he would be a very good IGL for us. And whenever I hit him up and we started talking, he asked me if I think we should bring him on as an IGL or a non-IGL, because he was down for doing both things, right? Yeah. So we said that we're going to try both ways. We're going to try him both as an IGL and as a player. But whenever we tried him as an IGL, everything felt really good. Mm-hmm. And also the other thing is, with the role changes, that King is now a duelist. It's very hard for your duelist to IGL as well. And for example, King today, he didn't have like that great of a game with the operator on split. So at one point he was like, guys, it's kind of like different to open scrims and up on the stage. So like for him that would have been very very heavy to like deal with the role change, deal with the IGLing. So it just made sense that Rossi would be the IGL.
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of it was kind of just alleviating all of like the mental battles that you have to do with being a duelist, as well as just making all these types of calls. the many one-on-ones I imagine you have to do as an IGL kind of alleviate bandwidth.
Yeah, it makes it a lot harder for sure, and that's the main reason why we chose to stick with Rossi on IGL, and I think we didn't even trial him as like a non-IGL in the end. We just saw his IGLing and we were like, yeah, that's pretty good. We like it.
Mm-hmm. And I guess I'm just curious, does the style of comms change when you kind of make the switch from King to Rossi? Is because I've spoken to both players in interviews before, and King kind of is like more soft-spoken but very well-spoken at the same time. Rossi is kind of more like loud, charismatic, like super sociable. Has anything kind of changed in this switch? Like, what are kind of the main differences?
I think the biggest difference is like how much more hands-on Rossi is, and how much he's like micromanaging other players in general. And I feel like for our team, to a certain extent, that's pretty good because we have a lot of players that don't like to talk as much.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And you know, this is a problem whenever you don't have an IGO who's not hands-on, which is King. King thrives in a more loose environment when you have players who can fill out the gap. For example, for us last year, that was Mazino. Mm-hmm. So Mazino was making a lot of mid-round plans alongside with Corbin, but when Mazino left for crew and we had to pick up Nathan, we saw that we were just left with this gap in the comms that we just couldn't fill. So in terms of King as an IGO in this roster, I feel like no matter how much we tried to make it work, it would have been very hard just because of the style of King's IGLing. Compared to Rossi, who really likes to micromanage people, who likes to tell people like, go there, do that. And just even in mid round, he would, like, let's say, for example, he's playing on A on Icebox, he would micromanage the people on B, and he would be very good at it. So I do feel like it's a good IGO for this team.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I mean, I really appreciate the insight into everything. Makes me really understand kind of the dynamics of the communication. And now I'm just curious, for you as the coach, let's take results aside. Within the next like 3 to 4 weeks, 4 weeks is a month, but you know, like what are kind of the main things that you would want to work on with this team then, so that you can kind of get to like the vision that you had in your mind of why you made this change in the first place?
Yeah. I feel like I would want to work a lot more on around the concept of the team, because I feel like today we kind of failed with like some very simple and basic concepts. For example, on defense on Icebox, whenever MIBR was going A, and we knew that this was going to be their game plan. For example, we were calling either flood or retake, right? And sometimes we would mix it up. So whenever you say flood, that means they throw their utility, and while they're scaling up, you instantly retake. You don't let them plant the spike. You kind of like create chaos. So for example, we would say retake, and we would play for a flood instead. So there would be like always 1 or 2 guys that are not on the same page with the rest of the team, and then the whole game plan is ruined. So mistakes like this can happen with a new team. Well, this is not really a new team, but especially with a change of an IGO, this can happen. Yeah, but in terms of like basic concepts, I feel like we need to be at a way higher level to make it work.
Awesome, Itopata. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.